Welcome to the Emerging Minds Families podcast.
Hi, I'm Alicia Ranford, and you're listening to an Emerging Minds Families podcast. Before we start the conversation today, we'd like to pay respects to the traditional custodians of the land on which this podcast is recorded, the Kaurna people of the Adelaide Plains. We also pay respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples, their ancestors and elders past, present and emerging from the different First Nations across Australia. In today's podcast, we are going to be talking about connection, and in particular, how people connect within their local community. Because in our fast-paced, digitally connected world, the importance of building meaningful relationships within our local communities often gets overlooked as we navigate busy family lives. Knowing our neighbours and connecting with the families and people in our local area can become secondary to the daily chores and busyness of life. We will be touching on themes of domestic violence and loss of life. If you feel this may bring up difficult feelings for you, perhaps give this week a miss and join us next fortnight, or you can find resources for support in our show notes. We're going to be talking with mother and son Debbie and Sam, who work together with the Hackam West Community Connections Officer Sarah, who also happens to be a resident of the local area. Hackam West is one of the lowest socioeconomic suburbs in Australia, and it's a really remarkable story how this beautiful butterfly garden came to be. So welcome Debbie, Sam and Sarah. Thank you all for being here with us today. Debbie and Sam, can we start by hearing how the idea of the garden came about?
The garden started as an idea amongst a group of homeschooling students, because Sam was homeschooled along with the rest of his siblings. And there was a group, they stayed at the zoo and they made this group called Animals Anonymous. And they decided to raise money to save orangutans. After fundraising for that, they did this big walk. They were looking for something else. And we were sitting around a table, what could we do? And someone came up with the idea of a community garden that focused on local animals and plants rather than on growing food. And they came up with the idea of calling it Growing More Than Trees. And so we were looking for a site. What happened then was there was a domestic violence incident where a woman in Hackam West was murdered, and we went to the vigil, which was held in this disused reserve. The reason it was held there was because it had this giant butterfly, concrete butterfly in the ground that had been neglected. But because of the symbology of butterflies and domestic violence, vigil had been chosen to be held there. So we went there and we had never noticed the butterfly. We lived in Hackam West for a long time, but had never known that there was this butterfly there. And this space was right next to the children's centre and next to the school. So it's 1.2 hectares and it was just weeds.
Oh, so quite a large area.
Yeah, a big area. And we thought, this is it. This is the spot. And we approached Sarah. I was already part of People Matters Hackam West, which is this organisation in community members and for NGOs and for the council and for the school and for the children's centre. They all sit around a table and we think of things that we can do together to improve the community. So I took the kids, Growing More Than Trees, and we did a presentation at People Matters Hackam West. And that was how the idea was born, and it just went from there.
Oh, fantastic. And Sam, what age were you when you and Mum first started the garden?
It was 2016, so I would have been 17 then.
And what's your memory when together you came up with the idea of doing the garden?
I think we just share an interest in nature. So she got me started in gardening and sparked my passion really. And I think I've influenced her as well now because she knows a lot more about indigenous species of flora and fauna. And we've kind of learned together. It's kind of grown into this huge project we're very proud of.
Absolutely, and you should be very proud of that. And what do you think it meant to you to be a part of a project like this as a young boy?
I mean, I wasn't really thinking about it really. I just wanted to plant. That's all I ever wanted to do really.
And it must be quite incredible for you to see now how much your efforts have gone into growing such a beautiful space that's used by the whole community.
Certainly, yeah. I talk about it all the time to my co-workers and friends, and it's always a huge source of pride for me.
As it should be. And Sarah, what did the council have to consider when deciding about the viability of the garden Debbie and Sam had proposed to you? And what did it mean to walk alongside them and the community to get the garden up and running?
Yeah, well, Debbie was a real trailblazer in this space. So we've actually learnt a lot as a council about what considerations there are. We had to certainly look at the future of that piece of land and whether it had been earmarked for anything in particular. And once we got the green light from the open space team, we were able to look at grants and see what money we could source for the project.
And had the council done anything similar to this before?
There have been lots of smaller gardens, perhaps more food growing gardens that are attached to community facilities, but something at this scale was quite a new concept or new challenge for council.
Debbie, what do you think are the benefits the garden has brought to the local community?
There's been so many different community groups and people involved, so that's a very multi-layered question. The benefits to me, and the reason that I do it, the passion that I have for it, and I think Shan shares this with me, is this passion for nature, and that nature needs to have a space in our human world. So trying to create that space in the middle of a suburb was something that really excited both of us. And I think that we communicate that value in everything that we do. And there's other people in the community who have also managed to find that inspiring and have allowed them to then come and contribute, because we've made it easy for them to participate by having the project, and the plants are there and they can come and get their hands in the earth, and the kids can see their parents planting and valuing nature, and they get to come and they love to water. Kids love watering. And then, of course, there's the value that we've given to the children's centre, which is next door. They can come bring the little kids in. There's also the schools that have been involved. There's the learning that we've offered in terms of seed collecting and propagation, knowing about butterflies, and a lot of learning, educational value. And of course, like, we've had youth justice involved as well. So those kids that have fallen off the rails, they can come to a natural space where they feel comfortable, and they've made furniture from pallets and seen that installed, and they've got the pride that they can come and sit on those chairs now, which is quite a thing for the council actually, to allow them to be put in the garden, because it was like, oh, pallet furniture, it's going to fall apart in a year. But Sarah did her magic, and pallet furniture is there 5 years later, perfectly sittable on it.
And that's where I think this project has really been able to show council that it's okay to take risks sometimes and trust community and be led by community as well, that we're working on community land.
And it sounds like it's built over time. So you obviously had this amazing idea and took it to council and found the wonderful Sarah who's helped you develop it. But from a starting point, when you first got together, what was it like as different members of the community came together and noticed that the garden was happening and changing? I'm imagining there was a real sense of something exciting was happening. Can you tell me a bit more about that, Sam?
Well, I think I was very happy to let the garden sort of evolve organically, and I really just wanted the community to make it their own as well. So I think the fact that I feel very happy just to be like a custodian of the garden and try and invite people in to get their own ideas. No one's really come forward with anything yet, but I'm sure it'll happen eventually. As we keep building momentum, things will happen.
And do you find you'll be working in the garden? And I can imagine people walking past and asking you about different things and having conversations with people that you perhaps wouldn't normally stop in a supermarket and have conversations with.
Oh, certainly. Last time we had a support worker who was just walking past, like, he noticed what we were doing and came and talked to me and said that he had a client who'd be very interested in joining. He brought him down and I had a chat with him and told him what it was all about, and the next day he came and helped out with the kids. So that was just spectacular that someone could take interest in such a spontaneous way.
And have other organisations got on board and supported the garden since it began?
Yes, absolutely. We've had the Hackham West Men's Shed build us some beautiful rainbow seating that wraps around a tree, and it's just big enough for a classroom size of children to come over and do their reading and come and sit under the tree on this beautiful circular bench. So that was the school and the men's shed that have become involved. We've had a lot of NGOs come along and support. We had the Uniting Communities Kids and Dads program make some bee hotels and do some different activities with their clients in the garden. Too many to really list, I think, over the years. Who else comes to mind, Debbie?
We've had Woodcroft College has been hugely supportive in the last few years, bringing their Year 10 students down for their service week, and they come down 2 days, like 2 full days, and just so much mulch. They have done so much wheelbarrowing of mulch, just incredible amounts of work, and planted in the last 2 years, we've planted 3,000 plants. Their help, there's been other community events as well that did some of that, but they just work so beautifully, and we've had Cardarn College help as well. We've also had Christie's Beach High School students were coming every week for a while. again, shifting mulch. Without their help, we wouldn't have been able to do the project. So definitely a lot of help from schools.
And then internally from council, different teams have come on board and supported. So we had the tree team come and plant a pocket forest with some students as well who had never ever planted a tree before, these kids.
And can I ask, what is a pocket forest?
Tiny little forests that have been planted in different suburbs.
The idea is that it'll be a refuge or like a stop-off sort of spot for birds as they kind of migrate across. It's probably a lot about the yellow-tailed black cockatoos, because they're critically endangered. So we've got Aloe drooping sheoak, and we've got native pine as well, and of course just some gum trees, some eucalypts. So that's kind of like their food. They can kind of just drop in and have a snack before they travel on.
And move to the next pocket forest.
That's right.
I think the pocket forest is also, the concept is also about reducing heat sink. So the council has a commitment to plant, I think it's 1 million trees or something. It's some huge number of these, and they've chosen areas where the heat builds up. So by having the trees, it vastly reduces the amount of heat with the climate crisis upon us. These will make a difference.
And I don't think that this particular reserve would have been chosen for a pocket forest had the butterfly garden not begun in that place.
And do you feel that this garden has helped children to feel connected with their local community?
Well, there's a lovely story related to the pocket forest, actually. The council team that was there planting the trees, there was an old guy and he was about to retire, like it was this last week, and he was telling the Christie's Beach High School kids that the huge eucalypts that were giving us beautiful shade, he planted when he was their age. So there was this sense of continuity, and there they were planting, and that they could come back when they were retiring and see what they'd helped create.
Oh, I love that intergenerational sharing of knowledge and community building.
I think Sam, being a young person, has been an inspiration.
I think I love working with younger people, and I think just my enthusiasm and love of nature has really carried me through to help sort of connect with them, and I love to share my passion, and I think they just react to it in a very positive way. They're not always interested, but I think I kind of respect their individuality. It's hard work and you can kind of engage with it in any way you want. So I think they're kind of happy to just chill out for a while sometimes, but it's always good to get them revved up and do some hard work. And I love telling them all about Indigenous species. So that's always good to have a chat while we're planting away.
And I imagine that it would be a space where if you were having a day where perhaps you felt lonely or you'd had a bad day, you could wander down to the garden and know that you might bump into someone else to say hi to, or be able to just sit and contemplate your day.
Yeah, definitely. I think the garden has become a great place just to sit and enjoy.
At the moment, we have a couple of the bird boxes that we've put up are in use. So you can sit and watch the little baby birds poke their heads out. So that's a really lovely thing to do. And I think it's been enjoyed by a lot of the children in the community, that they can go and check that out. One of the kids that was down recently planting, I think, as Sam was saying, there's the individuality of children. And I think the garden provides an opportunity for children who don't always get an opportunity to express their love and observational smarts. There was a young boy who was just absolutely thrived in the garden. He actually came both days of the service days from Woodcroft and was lifting up every rock, and he found the bee hotels that had sort of been covered over by clover. He dug them out and there was all these little baby bee pupa in there, and he was so excited, and we took photos and he got to really shine and he was so enthusiastic. So it gives an opportunity for kids who is maybe not into classroom learning can really explore and enjoy.
Debbie, how do you think being out in nature supports children's mental health and well-being?
I think that nature provides an opportunity for children to risk take, to explore creatively, to feel connected to something beyond just the human world. And I think that there's a lot of research out there about the huge value of natural spaces for children's wellbeing. In fact, the kindy teacher was saying to me the other day, we just love having the butterfly garden because when the kids get a bit ratty, we take them out there. And I think that's so true, that being in confined spaces all the time is not good for kids. And just having the space to be able to move in any direction and explore and look at things is just so wonderful for kids' developing brains.
It sounds like there's a lot of other benefits for children and families within your community as well. What else have you seen?
I remember, because the concrete butterfly was it was a disused thing, it had been there. and we decided to do pebble mosaics in it. And the Hackam West Primary School kids came over. It was a Year 7 class, and there was one kid who's always in trouble, and he was being closely observed by his teacher, but he got to express himself through these pebble mosaics, and he was the first person to think of, rather than laying the rocks flat, putting them upright, and he created this beautiful rock rose with these rose petals of them. It was just amazing, and yeah, so it got really a lot of validation for that and a lot of love. Everyone was like, wow, you're amazing.
And to see that creativity come out in a way that perhaps he hadn't been able to express before is quite remarkable.
Yes, the 3D world. And I think we always have, when we have our events, we always have nature crafting opportunities as well. So little kids can come down and get their hands in clay, or be making little figures, or doing something with natural materials. So the creativity is a big part of it, I think, as well.
It must be quite remarkable for you within the council to have seen how this community garden has grown and flourished and what it's done for the suburb of Hackam West, and it sounds like even the surrounding suburbs. Have you seen more growth in this area within the council?
Yeah, for me, this project has just been such a true example of what community development can be, trusting the voice of our community members and listening to them. And after such a tragic occurrence as this murder in the local suburb, for people then to kind of rally around together and look at creating a place that people can come to feel safe, be able to reflect and connect with the neighbours has just been really, really profound. It's been one of the highlights of my career.
And has this led to more opportunities within the community?
Yes, so because of this project, I think we've been able to internally in council work out some of the processes that need to be developed to be able to enable other community members to bring these kinds of ideas to light. So just locally in Christie Downs, which is not far from Hackam West, another group of neighbours have got together and are exploring the idea of turning a gravel pit into a garden. So that's actually come a long way now, and they're starting to look at getting some funding for that project. So it certainly has been an inspiration for others.
People Matters, I think, has a lot to offer as well as a concept. So the idea of People Matters Hackam West, it's not just council, it's the school, it's the children's centre, it's the community centre, it's all the NGOs, Anglicare and Junction, all coming around. And a lot of the things in the garden have happened really easily and quickly because there's all those resources. And so I can turn up and say, I need blah. And they're like, yeah, I can do that, or I can help, or yes, we've got the $100 you need to buy that particular thing, or whatever it is. And we've actually had events that have happened just from no funding, just everyone contributing something, and bang, there we go. We've got a family event happening in the garden. So I think there's a lot to be said from having that table around which you can communicate to make these projects happen really easily.
And I love that you said it's located right next to a children's centre. So I imagine in a day too, it's really beautiful that you might be working in the garden and the children come out and do an activity there. They're always waving at you through the fence.
Yeah, they got to know you.
Always asking questions. As soon as I go near the fence, it's always, what are you doing? I'm digging it. I'm putting some plants in the ground, or I'm spreading some mulch. And they're like, oh, cool.
How nice that it encourages that curiosity from them.
For sure, yeah.
About what's happening.
No, they're future recruits.
That's a great way to think about it. And have you all made new friends through this experience?
Well, Sarah's become a very good friend to both Sam and I.
Yeah, definitely. Built relationships with Debbie and Sam. And there's been some other volunteers who've come on board and stuck with us through the years.
I've just made a new friend, actually came beginning of this year, came to one of our events, Chris, and yeah, we go for walks together, chat. He comes over and helps Sam and I with all the tedious jobs of filling pots and thinning out things and all of that. So he's a real go-to and lovely guy.
Debbie and Sam, what could others who wanted to create a safe space do to look at the possibility of doing this in their community?
Well, I think there's really no understating just the power of creating a network. Like Mum was saying before, how we've kind of done a lot of events where people have pooled all their resources together and we've made something out of nothing. It's like, this is just the power of community here going forward into the future with like a lot of the pressures of climate change and the economic pressure that we're feeling today. I think people are going to make a big return to creating stronger, tighter knit communities, because that's how we survive as people and thrive.
To add to that, I think imagination is an important thing. Since having done this garden, I drive around and I'm like, oh, there's another spot. Oh, there's another spot. So I think just thinking outside of what's there, what's possible. And then if you actually start asking the questions, thinking that, and seeing what resources and what connections you have in your community, you'll be amazed at how people just need that little bit of a nudge and just a little bit of leadership, and look what we've achieved. I haven't actually physically planted a plant for quite a few years because my back is bad, but we've planted thousands and thousands of plants together.
Sarah, do you have advice for community members who are looking to approach their local council about initiatives and ideas like this?
Yeah, certainly. I think don't be put off by some of the hurdles that you might have to jump through. If you're lucky enough, as we are at Onkaparinga, to have community development officers or community connections officers, they're there to help you navigate some of the council procedures and processes. And then it's about not giving up. So sticking at it. And there have been times when perhaps it's just Debbie and I doing some weeding or working in the garden. But over time, you'll find that other people will get on board. So don't give up. Keep at it. It's worth it. One of the things to keep in mind is that there might be some rules and regulations that you have to abide by. A great example of that is our verge guidelines. So we do encourage people to plant on their verges. We just ask people to be mindful of things like the contamination of the soil, the types of plants that you plant and how high they might grow, where bins are going to be placed, those kinds of things. But that's certainly a great place for people to start if they're wanting to do something small, is to look at their verge planting guidelines on the council website and have a go at planting something like that.
Yeah, it's very important to state that our project was small in the beginning as well. We only had the one grant and we didn't really know where it was going to end up in the end. So you just have to start something and just try something small at first. And then if you've got the energy and the motivation after that, just keep going.
We know that strong relationships and a strong sense of community builds positive well-being, good well-being in people. We really encourage neighbours to get to know one another, to have a cup of tea, or even to do something as big as having a street gathering or a play street. We can support people through our Play Street project to invite their neighbours along to have a party on their street and close their street down. So that's something that we did at the Butterfly Garden quite a few times. I think 3 or 4 times we've had street gatherings just on the street right next to the Butterfly Garden, and that's been a great way to engage with the neighbours too who live opposite the Butterfly Garden and get them invested in what's happening in the garden.
And before we finish, I wanted to ask you, Sam and Debbie, what advice would you have for any of our listeners who perhaps wanted to get involved in something going on in their local community, maybe didn't feel confident or know what to expect?
There's lots of organisations and groups already doing things. So a quick Google, I'm sure you'll find something. In Adelaide, there's Bringing Back the Butterflies. They're doing propagation at the moment. There's Trees for Life. There's lots of different groups doing things. So you can just join in with something that's already happening. Just keep an eye out and check out your local community centre, see what they're doing gardening-wise. Lots of opportunities out there.
And Sam, do you think it's a matter of if you see someone doing something interesting, go and ask them about it, like those kids did when they peer through the fence at you?
Definitely. I think curiosity is a good instinct to have. You'll meet more people, and if you're interested in starting any sort of movement, people are necessary.
I was going to say that too, Sam. I was going to say you can't do it on your own.
Yeah.
You've got to get other people on board.
Sam, I understand that from your love of nature and your involvement in the community garden, it's led you on the path that you're on today. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Certainly. So I'm working in the conservation industry now, working for Greening Australia. They're a huge organisation and it's been really good. I've been learning a lot. The garden just kind of kept me occupied and in the conservation mindset. So it's just keeping me prepared for work and keeping me on my goal of working in conservation and achieving that lifestyle. Just the fact that I get to go out in nature every day when I'm working and just experience what it's like to be in the conservation industry is just a huge step forward for me. And whether if I end up staying with Greening Australia for the rest of my life or if I end up going somewhere else, I'll know that they were part of the reason that I was successful in my dream.
I love to think that this initiative that you and Mum started all those years ago, it's now helped develop your love of nature and see you move into that industry. So I wish you the very best of luck with that. Thank you all so much for joining us today. It has really been so wonderful learning about the magical space you've created together for your local community.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us. It's been excellent.
And thank you to our listeners for joining us. If you would like to keep up to date with our latest conversations, we'd love it if you like and subscribe to our Emerging Minds Families podcast channel. You can also find us on Instagram at Emerging Minds AU or on Facebook at Emerging Minds Families. You've been listening to an Emerging Minds Families podcast. If anything spoken about in today's episode has been distressing for you, or you find yourself struggling, please reach out for help. You can call Lifeline on 131114, or more resources for support can be found in our show notes.
Visit our website at www.emergingminds.com.au/families for a wide range of free information and resources to help support child and family mental health. Emerging Minds leads the National Workforce Centre for Child Mental Health. The centre is funded by the Australian Government Department of Health under the National Support for Child and Youth Mental Health program.